This is Shawnee Godwin, host of Joy Economics, and you're listening to Season 2, Episode 16, featuring CJ Stewart, an Atlanta native and former Chicago Cubs outfielder. Join us as we revisit a powerful conversation from Season 1 with CJ, where he candidly talks about his journey from one of the most dangerous housing projects in Atlanta, Georgia, to the life-changing opportunity of being drafted by the Chicago Cubs. Today, he is now dedicated to building his legacy through player and youth development as the founder and CEO of Diamond Directors and the founder of LEAD, which stands for Launch, Expose, Advise, and Direct. So get ready to be inspired and motivated, and get ready to make your own change in the world.
Welcome to Joy Economics, creating better ways to live, work, and play. Our show will challenge the way we do business in the corporate world and provide listeners with the tools and know-how they need to find more joy at work and in life. And now, your host, Shawnee Godwin.
Hey, this is Shawnee, and we're back today with Joy Economics, creating better ways to live, work, and play. And I cannot wait for you guys to hear from our guest today, Mr. CJ Stewart, the CEO of Diamond Directors and LEAD, and author of Living to Lead, a story of passion, purpose, and grit. CJ, how are you this morning?
I am doing great, especially that I get a chance to hang out with you.
Hanging out with me, that is such an honor. I am so honored to have you here. I cannot tell our listeners how excited I am. When I first found out that I was going to have a radio show, of course I was excited about that, but I couldn't wait to have certain people on the show, and you were one of those people. In fact, I reached out to you very early on, and I was like, I got to get you on the show, and then we were working on the schedule, and I flipped it all around, and today's the day I get to have you on the show, so I cannot contain myself.
Yes, I'm excited too. I mean, I remember, matter of fact, when you reached out to me, I remember I was pulling into my driveway. I had a long day. But what was good, though, is I saw your name pop up. I knew it was going to be something good, and it was. And so I'm here. So it was great.
Great. Well, I am excited, as I've been saying 50 million times. And so I'm going to do what I call my Olympic swimmer move, where I'm going to climb way up to the highest diving board there is, and we're going to just dive straight, like a nosedive straight into all things CJ Stewart, Diamond Directors, and LEAD. So first, I'd like to tell our listeners a little bit about you. CJ Stewart is an Atlanta native, a former Chicago Cubs outfielder, and an Amazon #1 best-selling author of the book Living to Lead, a story of passion, purpose, and grit. He has earned the recognition of being one of the top baseball player development professionals in the country. As the founder and CEO of Diamond Directors, Stewart has achieved unmatched success in the player development industry. He has over 13 years of experience, and his firm has developed some of the game's top amateur, collegiate, and professional players. Stewart's impressive client list includes Jason Hayward of the Chicago Cubs, Dexter Fowler of the St. Louis Cardinals, Andre Jones of the Rocketon Eagles, former Atlanta Brave, and Andrew McCutchen, Pittsburgh Pirates, of the Pittsburgh Pirates. CJ grew up in one of Atlanta's most dangerous housing projects, Hollywood Brooks, located on Hollywood Road in Atlanta, Georgia, and his story is a perfect example of the phrase, where you start doesn't determine where you finish. Although statistically the odds were stacked against him, Stewart used the sport of baseball to overcome statistics and become a compassionate, engaged member of society. Through the help of kind strangers in his community, he was able to take his love for the game from John A. White Park, which I know, I was a Welcome Park girl.
Okay.
all the way to Wrigley Field when the Chicago Cubs drafted him not once but twice in 1994 and 1996. Now, Stewart and his wife, Kelly, are doing the same for inner city youth in Atlanta through their nonprofit organization, LEAD, which I'll have him tell us what that stands for. And their mission is to empower an at-risk generation to lead and transform their city so they can become ambassadors who lead Atlanta to lead the world. Man, I love that. Stewart is providing a way for deserving inner city youth to transform communities through baseball. And to date, 100% of Leeds ambassadors, student athletes have graduated from high school, 95% have enrolled into college, and 92% have received college scholarship opportunities. Stewart's way of saying thank you to those who helped him stay on the right path is to pay his blessing forward and create empowering opportunities for Atlanta youth today and into the future. That is so dope and impressive. So I'm going to be quiet at this point. This is where I drop the mic, but rather pass the baton to you, dear sir. And if you could please just talk to us about all of this, but specifically take us all the way back to little CJ Stewart on Hollywood Road and take us to the beginning of your story.
Yeah, so it's an honor and a pleasure to be here. I mean, I'm really proud of being a son of Atlanta, and there was a time where I wasn't so proud. As a child, a lot of things were hidden from me. I was born and raised in poverty. My father was 25 years old. My mom was 16. They met. I guess it was about 1975 or so, and my mom was pregnant with me at age 16. So I was born April 10th, 1976, Grady Hospital. So I'm a Grady baby. Grady baby. And so we lived over on Hollywood Road in Hollywood Brooks. And, I guess just from, looking at television, I could definitely see that there was a difference in my lifestyle versus the difference that I saw on television. So I was pretty aware that we were living different than others and lesser than. But I was that kid, though, that was always wearing khaki pants and collared shirts. I got picked at a lot. And I was, a young student in Atlanta public schools. And, my mom, I later found out my first name is Courtney. Mm-hmm. And I ended up changing it myself as a young child to Courtney. Mm-hmm. I didn't like Courtney at all. I changed it to Courtney, but then found out that it was a unisex name and I got picked on a lot. But nonetheless, she named me after a gentleman named Cortland Palmer, who was a white male real estate mogul on All My Children.
Oh, awesome.
So, here my mom, very young, mother, and my dad were doing the best that they could. But I mean, they literally were learning how to raise me through television. And so we had some struggles. And so, the poverty was hidden from me. They really wanted me to grow up to become this leader, and education was supposed to be the way out. And, I wanted to play baseball. That was the thing that I wanted to do. My grandfather, Horace Dunn, who's now passed, he, a really good man. He was a functioning alcoholic and at times could be abusive verbally. I never saw him physically be abusive towards my grandmother, but verbally, but a really, really good man. And despite all these different things that people were trying to get me to do, education and so on and so forth, baseball was the thing. I remember just being able to be there with him on a hot day in Atlanta, and we would watch those Chicago Cubs baseball games. And I remember saying at the age of 8, what I want to do when I grow up is play professional baseball.
So he introduced you to the game of baseball?
Yes. And, and I don't think it was, I don't think he ever played or anything. It was just one of those things that we would do. I remember 3 things. A few things. It was hot. They had an air conditioner that would sit out of the window, and it was loud. Mm-hmm. And we would always have like a tall glass of Coke, which I wasn't supposed to have because it had so much sugar. But I felt like I was able to just be myself around him, and he was a functioning alcoholic, mm-hmm. and he was everything that I was being told not to be. But I had aunts that had college education, and I had teachers. And people just didn't seem happy to me, the people that had college degrees. Right. My grandfather was happy.
Yeah, well, it's so funny. My dad had this saying, I tell people my dad died early. He died at 58 years old in his sleep. But he lived his life. He had so many sayings. I'm sure several will appear on this show. But one of them was, when your number's up, your number's up. So that was kind of his philosophy in life to justify, all the things that he did to enjoy himself, the drinking, the smoking, the partying, but he was a great guy, and he left a huge legacy. And so what I hear you saying is, out of all of the people that were in your life, the teachers, the people who were there, he was someone you connected with. And at the end of the day, that's those people that we connect with are the ones who really inspire something in us that births and ignites that thing that starts moving us forward. So tell us a little bit about through this connection to him and this person who's the antithesis of what your parents were kind of raising you to think and believe. You found kind of the inspiration to kind of start your journey away from Hollywood Road. Yeah.
So, even in doing that, one of the issues that I had was in looking at the Cubs, it was like, okay, so I want to play baseball, and where do I do that? So I remember I would, when the game was over, I would go outside and I would find a stick and I would hit rocks. I would throw rocks up in the air and I would hit them. So that was my practice time. And for whatever reason, I thought to myself, okay, success is if I can hit the rock to hit this tree, and failure is if I don't hit it. So I went through this process of hours of critically thinking about how do I make adjustments to be successful.
And how I want to unpack this a little bit. How old were you, would you say, at this age?
8 years old.
So that's intense, very cerebral thinking for an 8-year-old.
Yeah, I mean,
impressed. I'm very impressed.
And what was so awesome was I clearly saw far ahead. I saw myself playing with the Cubs. And so I go out here and I do this. And then I remember I found some styrofoam cups and I cut them and I made them into wristbands. And I remember my aunts coming over to me and they were just saying, listen, we got to get this baby playing some baseball. So they end up, and my parents were involved, they ended up getting me out to play baseball at Johnny White, and it was great.
Well, I am excited because we have a lot of overlapping parts of our lives and your story. We're going to take a real quick break. And when we come back, I want you to continue the story because it's completely fascinating and I can't wait for us to return.
Okay.
Joy Economics, creating better ways to live, work, and play, is brought to you by Communique-USA, a marketing and communications firm that provides staffing solutions to high-growth, high-stress teams so they are able to be more productive, efficient, and happy. Learn more at communique-usa.com.
And we're back today. I'm your host, Shani Godwin, with CJ Stewart, CEO of Diamond Directors and Lead, author of Living to Lead, a story of passion, purpose, and grit. And we are today on Joy Economics talking with CJ about his amazing story of really overcoming the odds and getting out of a lower income area in Atlanta, Hollywood Road, and making his way all the way to Wrigley Field. And right before the break, you were talking about being this very thoughtful and wise 8-year-old, honestly, to me, who was very intentional about thinking about what success was. If it was throwing a rock and hitting a tree, it was success, etc. So I want you to pick back up there and continue and tell us a little bit more about how this evolved, because there's a long way from throwing a rock in Hollywood Road to a tree to getting all the way to the major leagues and the Chicago Cubs and Wrigley Field. Yeah,
absolutely. And, I when I was a kid, I don't even know if I ever heard the word purpose, let alone knew what it meant. But, basically, for me today, I'm operating off of purpose being, what am I doing? And so then when I started thinking about things that I enjoyed doing, things that I had joy in doing, it was baseball. It was never academics. Even though several people wanted me to go to be a doctor or lawyer, those were some of the things that I heard in the black community, that to be a black male, if you're going to be successful, if you're not a doctor, you're not a lawyer, you're not an engineer, then you're a failure. I heard that from people.
Yeah, and it's a really big deal. I know my sister is a doctor, and I love the people in the church home that we grew up with, but it took me literally till just this year for someone to ask me what I did for a living. Everyone would always be like, are you the doctor?
Right.
Because it's in a black community, it's definitely this hallmark achievement if you can get out and be. if you can get out, period, it's an accomplishment. But if you can be a doctor, a lawyer, those are the careers that we hold in high esteem. So how did you overcome people just honestly naysaying possibly that you couldn't make it to be a baseball player professionally, or that wasn't the career path that would produce success and joy? A lot of times we smack people down just because we can't envision it for ourselves.
Yeah, well, I saw it clearly. And then by the time I got over to John A. White and started playing, at this time I'm probably 9 years old, 8 or 9, I remember being at games. So I knew about Dr. King. I knew about Jackie Robinson. And so those were two of my heroes. And I knew of people that supported them. So at any given time, it wasn't all the time, at any given time at our games, Mayor Maynard Jackson would be there, John Lewis, Andrew Young,
Wow.
Hank Aaron, not all the time, but these guys were there because they had family members or friends who had children that were playing in our league. Back then, I mean, baseball was so strong in Atlanta. I mean, we had, oh my God, I mean, per age group, we probably had 10 to 12 teams.
Wow.
Worth of kids.
Well, and I'll corroborate that because I was also growing up on the different side of town in the College Park, unincorporated South Fulton area around Welcome Park. But my dad was really into baseball, ironically. Even though he was from Buffalo, New York, he was a diehard Atlanta Braves fan. So I grew up watching the Braves and knowing all about the sport of baseball. So this was back in the Dale Murphy, Chris Chambliss era.
Man.
And I could not play well, but I definitely can swing and hit a nice little ball as a result.
Man,
so.
you remember all those guys.
Yeah.
Ozzie Virgil, Bruce Benedict. That was like old school. So
Yeah.
I got a chance to see all of that stuff on television. And so being there and seeing those leaders like Maynard Jackson, Mayor Maynard Jackson being there, these are people that I was studying in school, not to mention that I'm here in Atlanta, the birthplace of Dr. King, the birth state of Jackie Robinson, the home of CNN, the home of Delta. So even though I was living in poverty, I knew that I could accomplish what I wanted to accomplish. It was just going to require me, and I wasn't conscious of this, but I felt like as long as I just keep telling people that I want to do this, somebody's going to help me. Fast forwarding, I'm a 14-year-old at Westlake High School. So by this time, we moved out to College Park.
Westlake Lions.
And moved out to College Park, and I ended up eventually playing at Welcome All for the Welcome All Yankees, among many different teams. But at 14 years old, there's a gentleman, TJ Wilson, who recently passed. He had a daughter at Westlake who was a senior. He loved baseball, had a younger son that was coming up, saw me play, and he asked me, how interested I was in baseball. And I told him, I said, well, I actually want to play professional baseball for the Chicago Cubs. At 14 years old, I had my first workout with the Cubs.
Oh, wow.
So at that time, finances wasn't necessarily a barrier because it wasn't like the tournament play and all of that. So the Braves, all the professional teams would have free tryouts, but they were looking for college age men and so on and so forth, free agent. But how he worked out some kind of way. I'm 14. At this time, I'm about 6 foot tall. Mm-hmm. I go out there, I run, throw, and Preston Douglas, my scout, told me, he said, as long as you stay out of trouble, I'm going to draft you as long as you keep getting better. Mm-hmm. So I'm at Westlake thinking that I'm going to get drafted, and I told everybody. Rusty Hudson, who was our basketball coach and football coach and became a good friend of mine and still even is today, he told me, he said, listen, you're going to have to do well in school so that you can get a college scholarship. I didn't even know you could get a scholarship. So at that point, I started to connect academics to sports through him, if nothing else, as a means to an end, and got drafted by the Cubs my senior year of high school, went to Georgia State University, and then to CAB, and then got drafted again by the Cubs, played in the Cubs organization professionally.
So it sounds like such a linear trajectory, and I'm sure it wasn't, completely linear, but what I hear in your story is just this amazing focus that you had. And I know one of the words in your book, it says a story of passion, purpose, and grit. That grit definitely shines through in your story. Who do you attribute the focus to? Is that something you do attribute to your grandfather, or is it something that is innately CJ? And where and how did you cultivate that in you? Because a lot of people have a lot of ideas, a lot of people have a lot of dreams, but it's rare that someone can be so focused and be so linearly focused without distraction and hit the target on the tree just like that. So.
I believe my mom, I would definitely say she was probably the biggest influence. Even right now, unfortunately, we don't have the greatest relationship. We're doing some things right now to make it better. My mom had me at a very young age, and there was a lot of stress because of not having finances. When my mom was 16 years old, she graduated from night school at Washington High School. At 16, my mom and dad are still together today, and we had a lot of challenges, but my mom worked really, really hard. And they got to a place where of financial solvency. So I got a chance to see her. She never went to college. My dad never went to college. And they just worked. So they found out things that made them happy. Mm-hmm. And just even resolved that. I never had a conversation with them where they said, we want to be millionaires.
Right.
They just wanted to be happy. So I saw that. So
yeah, and on the show we talk about the currency of joy, and your story actually really embodies kind of the spirit of the show, because no one defines success for you as something monetary, but you could recognize and feel in your spirit the joy that came when you played baseball, and it sounds like that definitely has produced wealth for you, wealth in terms of not always necessarily money per se. I do hope that you have some decent income.
Yes.
But having been a Chicago Cubs baseball player, but more importantly, just the wealth and a richness that comes by doing work that you really love and you really pursue. And it's so funny you talk about your relationship with your mom, and I thank you for sharing so much of yourself with us today on the show. I know my parents were college educated. They met at Morehouse and Spelman College, but they got married really young, and I'm the oldest of that, so I just kind of go, well, we all kind of just grew up together. Mm-hmm. And they stayed married until my dad passed away. But you're right. I think when your parents are super young, and that was just a lot of the 70s baby's life story. My mom was 20 and my dad was 22 when they got married, and they had me at 22 and 24. Just kind of grow up learning it all together. And they get a lot of things right and they get a lot of things wrong. But at the end of the day, I came to realize that my parents gave me exactly what I needed to be the good of who I am. And so we're going to take a little bitty break. And when we come back, I want to dive in a little bit more and start talking to you and get to know who CJ Stewart, the CEO, is, and really understand what those great things were that your parents imprinted and imparted on you that have allowed you to be the greatness that you are today when we get back from the break.
We want to know how you are creating better ways to live, work, and play. If you have a Joy Economics story to share, reach us at joyeconomics.com.
Hey, it's Shawnee Godwin, and we're back on Joy Economics, creating better ways to live, work, and play. We are in the studio today with CJ Stewart, CEO of Diamond Directors and Lead, and author of Living to Lead, a story of passion, purpose, and grit. And CJ has just taken us through his journey from Hollywood Road in Atlanta, Georgia, one of the lower income, worst kind of, I don't like to say worse, but just a very impoverished area in Atlanta, and how he was able to, through baseball and his grandfather and a strong connection, learn the game of baseball with a lot of focus, grit, and determination, pull himself up by the bootstraps and make his way all the way to the Chicago Cubs. And I thank you for that story. A lot of people lots of times tell me they appreciate my vulnerability, and I don't know really any other way to be, but when I recognize it in someone else, I see kind of what they're talking about. And so I thank you for just being you and being honest and real, as they say, keeping it 100
yes.
In the studio today. So let's catch us up to real time. Today, you're CEO of Diamond Directors, the for-profit, and LEAD. First of all, what does LEAD stand for?
So LEAD is an acronym that stands for Launch, Expose, Advise, and Direct. And our mission is to empower an at-risk generation to lead and transform their city of Atlanta. Okay,
and so let's tell me how does LEAD and Diamond Directors, how does this all intersect, and what kind of are you up to? And you've got some amazing stats. We shared the graduation rates, the number of kids that are actually going on to college and getting scholarships, et cetera. How have you intertwined all of this and taken the good and the bad from your past and now are using that to help kids that are at risk?
Yeah. So, I'll just kind of start. So Diamond Directors is my for-profit, LEAD is the nonprofit, and my wife, Kelly, she works with me on both.
Okay.
We've been married for 20 years this year, and we've been working together for 20 years. And to remain married, that is like awesome.
That's a whole nother show. I'm going to have you and Kelly come back because I've worked with family members, and that's a whole nother show.
Oh, man.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
That's impressive.
It's been awesome. And so, for me, the word passion, it in fact comes from the Latin word suffering. And so what I suffered from and still suffer from to an extent is just not having intentional people in my life to help me get to where I need to be. So as a child, a lot of things were just kind of happen accidentally, and I know God is good. And there were some people, though, that could have really been more intentional with helping me. So Diamond Directors, I started doing that when my career with the Chicago Cubs was over. Mm-hmm. And I started training kids at a facility called Sportsorama in East Cobb.
Okay. Which
is has been and still is a mecca for baseball in the country. Tons of baseball players come from the area. So here I am. I failed out of college, Georgia State and DeKalb. So when I got drafted out of high school, went to college, I flunked out. Just didn't want to be there. I hated school. Played baseball, and so now I'm retired. I'm married. Don't want to go to college, so I said I'm just going to start training some kids.
Okay.
What was so great was you really didn't have to know what you were talking about to work with kids. You just go out there and flip them some balls, and you play professional baseball. Everybody's happy. I started probably within that first 2 or 3 months, really enjoying it, and then thinking about what I wanted people to be for me and being more intentional. So with that, I started having a lot of success in that area. Just by accident, you're going to have really good kids to train because it was just so strong. But I got really good really fast. I started working with Jason Hayward when he was 13 years old. Started working with Andrew McCutcheon when he was 13. Started working with Dexter Fowler when he was about 12. That's just 3 of several guys that I've been able to work with that have become major leaguers. So, that's 3 of the top players in the major leagues. I didn't go to college to learn how to teach them. I just did for them what I wanted done for me. Mm-hmm. So on that is for profit. So for a fee, and I've been doing this now for 20 years, I still have kids that come to me that want to play at the collegiate or professional level. I have to spend a lot of time starting out, though, with the parents and the kids, helping them develop self-confidence. If you do not want to play the highest level baseball, you need not come near me on my for-profit business. That's
real.
But I have 5-year-olds that come to me, I want to play at Stanford. Mm-hmm. So I take them through this assessment process and put them on a pathway. So my job with Diamond Directors is to provide the blueprint of success for diamond sport athletes. Ironically, I'm training. I had this young man. This was league started in 2007, so this is around 2006. Young man, Davis Conway. He was a middle schooler at the time. Okay. His father, Stan Conway, very good friend, very wealthy, very well known in the real estate industry. Training his son, and Stan asked me, CJ, what do you want to do with your life? It's like, I'm doing good. I'm making good money off of rich people like you. I got all these major leaguers in here. I'm good. And he was like, no, man. He said, there's so much more. He said, not to mention that there's a decline of blacks in baseball. You're here in Cobb County, but you're not doing anything to solve it. Mm-hmm. And so I'm wrestling with that. I'm being convicted. And, what I felt was he was challenging me in that here I am planting seeds in a garden that's not mine.
Wow.
I'm from Hollywood Road. There are kids over here that want to grow up and be great. So Stan challenged me to think about something else I wanted to do. A few weeks prior to him challenging me, I wanted to do a nonprofit. A good friend of mine, Antoine Smith, who I talk about in the book, who kind of like raised me, and we're the same age. He was saying that he wanted to start working with kids in College Park, and I told him, I said, well, why don't you do some mentoring? Start an organization, call it LEAD. Mm-hmm. So then weeks later, Stan challenges me on this. He said, listen, go home, think about what you want to do. I gave it some thought. I put together a proposal and said it's going to take $40,000 for me to start this organization, lead, and work with kids in the inner city of Atlanta. 3 days later, he gave me the money along with a program director. And so we're celebrating 10 years this year with LEAD.
Oh, wow. Congratulations. 10 years is a really big milestone. I remember when we hit that mark. And I hope you're taking time this year to just pause intentionally and just celebrate the moment. I tend to have these big milestone moments and I go, oh, we're 10 years old. And then I'm like on to the next thing. And it took someone telling me, what did you do to celebrate that? And it doesn't have to be something extravagant, but just the accomplishment of surviving 10 years. And you look at what's happened in the last 10 years with the recession and the economy and, changes in government, et cetera. That's a huge, huge accomplishment. So congratulations, first and foremost. But what I'd like to know specifically is you talked a little bit about passion and suffering. And you've shared with us about these intentional people that were on your path and led you to become who you are. Do you know how powerful you are, honestly, and just the impact that you are making and how that is just raising up a whole generation of goodness and people who honestly will be able to take good care of us when we get old. Are you even aware of your own power and your own magnitude?
At times I am. I mean, and words matter. And so even hearing this from you, I appreciate it. I mean, I've got a list of probably about, 50 people that have permission to correct me, give me advice. You are one of those people.
Oh, thank you.
And thank you. And then I've got people that I can't listen to you because I don't trust you, especially people that aren't willing to be vulnerable and trying to and check me. So, for me, humility is not thinking of yourself less, but thinking of others more. And so I know my spiritual gift. I know my earthly talent. And I am still very locked in and focused on what I see for Atlanta, and that's really developing these consequential leaders. So, you ask me if I'm aware of it. I do have an awareness. I am a follower of Christ, and so I'm really tuned in spiritually to just doing things that I need to do. I mean, 10 years ago, I probably right now would have said I couldn't do your show because I was out doing something stupid, just a whole calendar full of stupid stuff. But I'm aware and I accept it, but I also have to have those 50 plus people, give or take, that are constantly correcting me, saying, CJ, you are acting out of character, and then me making those changes.
Yeah. Well, we met in Leadership Atlanta. I call you like an honorary member of the Leadership Atlanta class of 2016, best class ever. But I know your class of 2015, and because I remember asking some friends, like, is he in our class? Because it's hard enough to go through the whole 10 months on your own one good time. You actually take the effort and are intentional about going back through. And so I always kind of admired that and thought that was unique and different. But for me in Leadership Atlanta, the day that really struck me the most was probably the one I thought the least about, which was the Power, Leadership, and Influence Day. And what I learned from that day is that we all have power, whether you're in a leadership program or not, whether you are a janitor, whether you are, at a toll booth. We all have power, but we get to use our power for good. And so, and we get to choose if we want to use it for good or if we want to use it for bad. So I thank you for using your power for good. I'm going to ask you this one question, and then we're going to take a break. If there was a song that was the soundtrack for your life, what would that song be? Tell us, and then we're going to take a quick break and get into some fun stuff.
So 94 was my year I graduated from high school, and I remember that's when Outkast came out. So I think Southern Playalistic.
Cadillac Music.
Yes,
Perfect song. We're going to take a break, get into all things Outkast, Southern Playalistic Cadillac Music when we get back on Joy Economics.
We want to know how you are creating better ways to live, work, and play. If you have a Joy Economics story to share, reach us at joyeconomics.com.
And we're back with Shawnee Godwin, your host, moi, and CJ Stewart, CEO of Diamond Directors and Lead. And this is Joy Economics, creating better ways to live, work, and play. And right before the break, CJ told us that the soundtrack of his life would be Southern playalistic Cadillac music. A man after my own heart. I am a big Outkast fan. And so we're just going to switch it up and just have some fun and talk about CJ the person. You are so impressive. You are a former Cubs player. You've started a for-profit where you train and coach and develop kids who are laser focused on becoming professional baseball players. You also have an organization, Lead, where you really go back into the inner city and underserved communities and really coach and train and equip those kids and give them a lifeline by showing them, being very intentional by showing them models of people who have made it and become successful. When you're not all of those things, when we strip it all down and at the end of the day, you wake up and it's just you. Who is CJ? What matters to you? What are the core qualities that you think you embody and that really defines who you are as a person?
So I consider myself a learner. I like learning from people and asking people questions and just being in different spaces, regardless of, because, for me, I don't have a college degree and I feel good about the things that I'm doing. So I spend time with people that are living in poverty, people that are homeless, people that are wealthy. I know a lot of people. So I'm a learner. I read a lot now. I've got an Audible app, and I'm just constantly reading all kind of books. Malcolm Gladwell. I just finished reading a great book called Dropping the Ball. I forget her name, but it is teaching me how to respect my wife and the work that she does as a mom and also in business. So that's a good gut check book there.
Gut check. I like
yes,
that, yeah.
Man. I gotta be right.
I'm sure your wife appreciates you reading this book too.
Yes, and and that's one of the things too, is because in Leadership Atlanta, one of the things that I struggled with was respecting women in positions of power. Mm-hmm. I never saw it. And just kind of looked at women as not being able to lead because my stereotype is women nag and all these kind of things that you stereotype women for being able to do.
Right.
And 2015 Leadership Atlanta changed my whole life.
Made you sit down.
Yes, I sat it down, and so now, matter of fact, I won't even, if at least half or majority of the women at the table. People at the table are not women. I don't even want to be involved.
Well, that's impressive. That program is so transformational. I think you are not coming out the same if you do that program. You go in one way and you're coming out transformed, different, eyes wide open about a whole lot of things. So that's neat that was one of the things that shifted in you as a result of that program. Yeah.
So let's see what else. I'm a fan of CNN. So I look at CNN.
So what do you like to do for fun? These might be fun things. I don't want to dismiss them as not fun, but surely there's got to be some more fun than CNN going on in your life.
Oh, man. Golly. I'm very playful, so I'm always, chasing my daughters around the house.
And you have two daughters.
16 and 10. And they play tennis. So, even today, I've got a pretty laid back day, so I'm gonna be home with them. We're gonna go out to the tennis courts.
That's right. I never have told you this. I think like most of us, the first thing I grab is my phone in the morning, mm-hmm. and I log on to Facebook. And it was like a Sunday morning, maybe Easterish or something. I don't think it was Easter Sunday, but around that time. And you were live with your daughters, and y'all are they were lobbing balls with your wife, and I was sitting there 7 o'clock in the morning watching y'all play tennis.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just remember that. So.
Yeah, so those are the kind of things that I really enjoy doing, and it's so funny because what I don't like doing is I hate golf.
Okay. Why is that? I'm just curious. I can't even hit the ball, so I know why I hate it. But
so I hate it because it takes too much time.
Okay.
But when I do love it, I'll do it at least once a year because it's one of them things where it really allows you to be exposed to yourself and dealing with failure. It's a mm-hmm. hard sport, and so. I'll at least do it once a year to do that. But, other than that, I really enjoy being at my church, Elizabeth Baptist Church, and I really love being with Leadership Atlanta. So I'm doing that once a month, and I'm good.
So who inspires you? You read a lot. You're very obviously very intellectual and thoughtful and purposeful about kind of the things you do and where you invest your time. But top 2 or 3, who are those people that inspire you in the world to show up every day and be the best that you can be?
So I'll say my wife is a given.
Okay.
That's a given. But
well, and that's important. Can I pause here? Because you say it's a given. A lot of people aren't going to shout out their spouse as a person who inspires them. Let's be real. And I think that is so beautiful that you recognize your wife inspires you. And just any time I see a healthy relationship where people build each other up, I just have to pause and give praise and support to that.
And thank you for pausing on that, because I mean, again, there was a time where I took her for granted, and so now just understanding her life and how she's overcome things and just watching her mature is great. Dr. Craig L. Oliver, who's our senior pastor at Elizabeth Baptist Church, so I'm a deacon there now. That's the church that I grew up in, was baptized in. I remember seeing him preach for the first time when he was 19. I was 16. And let's see. And then, God, it's so many people. Mr. Sherholtz with the Atlanta Braves is a very good friend. I was with him very recently. And it's a lot of people. Major General Ron Johnson, who was in Leadership Atlanta in your class.
My class, yeah.
He's my daughter's godfather.
Oh, wow, I didn't know that.
Carter Drew. It's so many people. I mean, like I said, I got about a list of 50 folks.
Yeah, well, and I'd like to just shout some of those people out. There was a post I saw, just a random post on something I was following on LinkedIn, and it was just saying, hey, let's take a moment to give some props and shout outs to the people who paved the way or gave us an opportunity or a chance when we weren't even sure we'd get one, and tag them here on this post. And I was able to shout out probably about 4 or 5 pivotal people in my career who literally, when I look back over it, brought a game changer opportunity my way, even when I wasn't looking for it. So I love to just ask people that question, because it gives us a chance to kind of pause and realize wherever we are, we did not get there alone. And I think the humility that's needed and required to acknowledge all of our success is a function of shoulders and people that we stand on, people who paved the way, people who were functioning and not functioning and dysfunctional that still shifted our storyline to get us to where we are. It's always fun to kind of hear who some of those people were. And for the other 47 people that you did not get to name, I'm sure they know. And if they don't, you have a great opportunity to share that with them. So yes. I want to ask you really quickly, we're wrapping up pretty soon, but I wanted to make sure I squeezed in this question about Mission 100. I know that's something that you're currently very focused on, and it's on the horizon for you. Can you tell our listeners what Mission 100 is and the significance of it?
So Mission 100 is a very keen focus of ours with LEAD. We've existed for 10 years, and we want to have 100 LEAD ambassadors within Atlanta Public Schools. So currently there are 10 APS high schools. So we're working to get 10 ambassadors per school. The only thing that's stopping us is funding. Okay. And so it costs about $3,500 a year to get a ambassador through our program. Right now we have 50. And we recently just secured 2 really large grants, $190,000 from Laureus Sport for Good, which works in collaboration with Mercedes-Benz. Okay. And then we also got $150,000 from Major League Baseball Players Association. Awesome. And so both of those allowed us to get staff. So we're working to get those. And just, even quickly on that, the reason why it's important, Andre Dickens, Kwanzaa Hall, Caesar Mitchell, Courtney English. These are 4 black men that are in leadership positions in this city that play baseball in Atlanta Public Schools and Parks and Recreation.
Oh, wow. I didn't know Andre Dickens played baseball.
Yeah, he played at Mays. So we are intentionally developing Atlanta's future leaders and developing them today.
That's really, really cool. So just to clarify for our listeners, because I just want to make sure everyone's tracking along. So this is for LEAD ambassadors. The goal is to have 100 LEAD ambassadors. And if you're in LEAD, are you automatically an ambassador, or is that what you're called? Or is an ambassador different than a young student who's in the LEAD program?
Yeah, so we have a middle school program, which right now we have 250 students, and we call them leaders that are at the middle school level. That's among 11 APS middle schools. And then our high school program is 3 months in the fall, August, September, and October. We have up to 100 that are with us. And then we narrow that number down to 50 young men that are on track to becoming consequential leaders. We are not creaming off the top trying to get perfect kids. Matter of fact, we're about 40% tier 3, 40% tier 2, and then 20% tier 1. Tier 3 being kids that are on track to not graduating and living lives of crimes possibly. So we want to get to 100 because at the end of the day, for me, as being a consequential leader and a son of this city, I have no college degree whatsoever. I'm living my life on purpose. I'm not against education at all. But my mission in life is to be significant, serving millions, bringing them into a relationship with Jesus Christ, starting with my wife, Kelly, and my daughters, Mackenzie and McKenna. So with that being said, living life on purpose, today being here with you was an assignment. So I say yes to assignments. I say no to invitations. So want to get 100 ambassadors that can live a life on purpose like that as well.
Well, thank you for honoring and executing your assignment as I execute my assignment, which is to bring great gifted people like you on our show. It has truly been a pleasure having you on today. The wait was worth it, and I hope we can have you back on again. Before we get out of here today, I'd love for you to let our listeners know how they can connect with you if they want to get plugged into Diamond Directors, if they know students who would be great potential prospects for LEAD or Mission 100. How do people stay connected to all things CJ Stewart?
So Diamond Directors, our website is Diamond Directors, and Directors is plural.com. And then for LEAD is LEAD, the number 2, legacy.org. You can look me up on Facebook. I'm on there, very active, as you said.
Very active.
Instagram, Twitter, and all that good stuff. So, just go to our websites, and our contact info is on there as well.
Well, I've been watching your social media game, and as a marketer, it's really tight. So y'all follow him, keep up with him. And CJ, it was a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining me today.
My pleasure. Thank you.
I hope you have an amazing day. See y'all.
There's just something so powerful about sharing our life's journeys and lessons learned along the way. We hope you found CJ's story inspiring and now feel motivated to take advantage of the life-changing opportunities that are sure to come your way. Thanks again for listening to Joy Economics, creating better ways to live, work, and play, and make today your greatest.
You've been listening to Joy Economics, creating better ways to live, work, and play. To learn more about this episode and other Joy Economics stories, visit joyeconomics.com.